Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of the first season of Jewish Talk with James. I'm James Nicholson, and here with me today is our resident New College survivor, graduate, Ruth Nicholson.
Hi all.
We are here on this Thursday, November 15th, the day before Shabbat, to talk about a couple of subjects. One of them, the first one we're going to be talking about, is how the left and the right have been treating anti-Semitism lately, sometimes tolerating, sometimes denouncing. We're also going to be talking about how a couple of days ago, Israel reached a peace treaty with some groups in Gaza. Or not peace treaty, ceasefire.
Ceasefire.
So, getting started, the House of Representatives Bipartisan Task Force for Combating Anti-Semitism has condemned the anti-Semitic attack on the Pittsburgh synagogue. The group was led by Representative Mike Doyle, who is a Pennsylvania Democrat and represents the Squirrel Hill neighborhood that is home to the Tree of Life Synagogue, which of course Aiden and I talked about in the last episode. And two New York Democrats, a Republican from New Jersey, one from Florida, one from Texas, and another from Texas, and one from Illinois, joined him. So it's really a bipartisan denouncement, and that's a good thing. But that's something rare today.
Well, yes. Politics have become so polarized that it is difficult for Democrats and Republicans to agree on anything. And you would think that something like denouncing a mass shooting would be easy to agree on.
Yeah, right? Doesn't seem that hard. And it sort of goes back to the unite the right thing. We were talking about this earlier, how it seems like the House of Representatives has to lead the way. You were talking about this, in fact, because it's like the president doesn't want to step on the toes of the more extremist parts of his base. So he's...
Yeah, I mean, ever since Charlottesville, the president has absolutely refused to denounce people on the right who are engaging in violent behavior.
Yeah, Unite the Right is what Charlottesville called themselves.
To see men with torches marching through a city in the United States saying Jews will not replace us. Well, for goodness sake, we're 0.02% of the population, something like that. No, we're not replacing anybody.
Yeah, right? Mexicans are way more likely to replace you than Jews. I mean, why are you freaking out about us?
Well, I don't think anybody needs to worry about being replaced by anyone else. I think there's...
Yeah, nobody does. But I'm just saying, if you're dumb enough to worry about that, worrying about 0.02% of the population, and one of the slowest growing populations at that.
What can I tell you? Hate is an irrational thing.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people that stoke the fear of people on the right, whether it's, against Jews or against Mexicans and other Hispanics, whatever it is, it's a matter of these people aren't like us, and so we should fear them and hate them. And it's really sad that this kind of behavior has kind of taken strong root in American politics and isn't being denounced from the steps of the White House.
Yeah. Or even the Senate. I mean, the fact that it's taken this long for the House of Representatives to denounce it is just crazy.
Oh yeah, well, Congress moves at a slow crawl.
That's true.
Sort of like a snail in molasses. I mean, it's just, it's pretty ridiculous.
And then there is the topic of tolerating it. If we start on the left, it's the fact that it's okay to use anti-Semitic slurs to attack anyone, including Jews, that you don't like. I was just reading earlier that it's common to call Ben Shapiro, a Torah-observant Jew, a Nazi. Even if he wasn't a Torah-observant Jew, that last name alone would get him executed in Nazi Germany.
Yeah, well, there has become this thing in American politics where anyone I don't like is a Nazi. So it dilutes the actual historical significance of what Nazis were and what they did. And at the same time, it paints people who disagree with you with this horrible, bloody brush and saying, hey, because you disagree with me, because I don't like your politics, because I don't like the things you have to say, I'm going to say the worst possible thing about you that I can. And it is sad and ridiculous.
Yeah, and the two of us are people who have actual family members who are Holocaust victims. And the fact that it's just become this thing to demean anyone and call anyone a Nazi, it's like, we have actual stories carried in our family of the horrors perpetrated by the Nazi regime. And there are very few human beings who come close to being like Hitler. There, there's Bashar al-Assad, who actively gasses his own citizens. But, that you make the same comparison to a man who actively starved and gassed his own citizens, and you just go around calling anyone you don't like that that's hate speech. There's no other way to describe it.
I think it's also childish and ridiculous because people have lost the way to say, I disagree with you. I don't like your point of view. I don't necessarily think this is good for the country. But they've lost the ability to actually have a conversation and say, you know, I don't believe that's the way we want our country to be or the way we want our country to be run. And instead of having a discussion where every point of view is heard, it has become normal on college campuses, and I don't know when this happened, to not just protest that someone's going to be there, but to go in, disrupt their speech, shout them down, basically behave in this incredibly childish manner instead of engaging in open and thoughtful debate.
Well, that's the thing I love about Steven Crowder is he just goes around to college campuses or onto the street and he just says, change my mind. I don't want to get into a loud argument or a fight. I just want to talk. There are so few people like that. And, he has a viewpoint. And I disagree with a lot of his views. But the fact that he is willing to sit down and have a discussion is something that I respect immensely.
Oh, yeah. I was having a discussion on a New College forum about a year ago with this kid who had recently graduated or was going to graduate, I'm not sure which, and I disagreed with something he'd written. And he went off and called me every name of the book and and I finally said, "Look, 30 years ago at New College, you could have an open, honest disagreement and debate over your beliefs. Obviously, things have changed in 30 years, and I don't know what your problem is, but it's not my problem." So,
Survivor. New College Survivor. Although that's not the reason why I call her a survivor, because like she said, 30 years ago, New College was different. There were other things. Professors ranting about the glories of throwing Molotov cocktails into Russian tanks.
well, he was an interesting fellow. So
Yeah, that does sound like a fun guy. Next things that I was going to talk about are the women's march. But before I get to that, actually, I wanted to talk about some news that was released a couple of days ago, um, on my birthday. Actually, that pretty much sucks. Um, that the Tunisian scouting movement barred French Jews from movement, an interfaith meeting, because BDS referred to this group as a Zionist organization.
well, whether you're a Zionist organization or not, the whole BDS thing is at its core amazingly anti-Semitic. Um, this is a group that says that Jewish people do not have a right to self-determination on their own ancestral lands. And what could be more anti-Semitic than that? And people try to say, oh, there's a difference between Zionism and Judaism, and at the very core of Judaism is this longing for the land of Israel, this longing for Jerusalem, and to have a movement that is literally at its core an attempt to destroy the Jewish homeland and thereby the soul of the Jewish people is just strikingly anti-Semitic. And people don't realize this. People don't realize how wrong-headed it is to think that Muslims can control 99.999% of the land in the Middle East and can throw a tantrum about Jews living in a place the size of New Jersey.
That that at the time was some of the worst land in the Middle East.
Oh yeah, there's no oil. The only reason it's desert, the only reason it's arable at all is because Jews came in and invented technology and worked their butts off and made the desert bloom. And now the Arab world says, "Oh, well, we want to take all of that from you." Like, no.
And I think it really shows the character of the BDS movement. A British BDS promoter was just arrested in London after he got off a plane from India because he got drunk and started shouting racial slurs at the Indians, um, about because they wouldn't give him any more wine because he was already acting drunk and disorderly, and he started shouting racial slurs at them and threatening to have a boycott of Air India because they wouldn't give him another glass of wine.
Yeah. Um, I think that certainly when you look at people like Jeremy Corbyn and the left parties in uh, Britain and in Europe, you see this core of anti-Semitism, and Corbyn has said some just vile anti-Semitic things, and he still continues to serve in Parliament. You know, he's the head of he's the head of
Labor.
the Labour Party, and people don't seem to think that there's a problem with this guy who's the head of the Labour Party just spouting the most vile anti-Semitic nonsense you've ever heard.
A lot of people think it's a problem. Actually, there's been a huge controversy in the Labor Party.
Well,
Jewish
the
groups
Labour Party
and
itself doesn't think it's a big enough problem to remove him.
yeah, well, Jewish groups within the Labor Party and non-Jewish members of the Labor Party have been trying to stop it, but it's yeah, but they've been running into issues. And that brings me to other things relating to the left tolerating anti-Semitism. The other thing to talk about Corbyn, to prove he wasn't anti-Semitic, he went to, I think it was a Passover dinner run by a group called Judas, that is an anti-Israel group that surrounds all of their ceremonies with being anti-Israel instead of any sort of Jewish ritual.
Well, of course, because at the end of the Passover Seder, you say next year in Jerusalem. So, you know.
But not just that, all of it. All of it was surrounded by anti-Israel crap.
And you know what the worst part is? A lot of these groups, like Jewish Voice for Peace, I'm going to put that in air quotes, many of the members aren't Jewish. They are someone whose great-grandparent, one great-grandparent was Jewish, or great-great-grandparent, and
BDS for Jesus.
They don't go to temple. They don't follow any of the customs. They don't do anything that it means to be Jewish, but they can say, "Oh, I'm 1/8 or 1/16 Jewish, and so I can speak about this." Well, no, you can't.
No. You're 1/16 Jewish. You've never gone to school and been told. I don't even like. I don't even want to say it. Like, if you guys want to hear the kind of crap that that people have said to me at school, then you can put it. Then you can ask me in the comments. But I'm not just gonna put it here with nobody asking. Anyway, and that's really the stuff that the left tolerates that you can cover up. We've already talked about how the right sometimes tolerates the alt-right, but the stuff that the left is tolerating that you really can't ignore is Louis Farrakhan.
Oh, I was just thinking that.
And
Absolutely.
The Nation of Islam. And these leaders of the Women's March have been defending him. And, one of them was attacked on it, and then another one came to her defense and basically said that she was coming to her defense because she's another leader of the Women's March with no defense as to the reason why she was being attacked.
Louis Farrakhan says some of the most outrageous things in the world. And, the fact that the so-called leaders of the Women's March are, one of them, for heaven's sake, said he was the greatest of all time. Like, you got to be kidding me.
He's not the GOAT.
But this is the Women's March where, basically they toss Jewish women out of the march because it is the position of people like Linda Sarsour that you can't be a feminist and be, be a Zionist at the same time. And, you know, Israel had equality for women in many ways before any country in the West did. And they're certainly the best place in the Middle East to be a woman. But Linda Sarsour talks about, wanting to cause America to go come under Sharia law. So how this woman is taken seriously as any kind of a feminist is it's absolutely
And Farrakhan is
crazy.
the GOAT. I mean, they've forgotten about the existence of MLK. I mean,
Right, but MLK worked with Jewish leaders and he didn't say anti-Semitic things and he was a Zionist.
yeah. Um, he even worked with Kahani, which is a little known fact, because uh, the whole Kahani not liking Arabs thing has caused people to try and forget his role in the civil rights movement in America. But he had one. Um, so yeah, both the left and the right have problems with tolerating anti-Semitism. The left, it often manifests as anti-Zionism, but not always. And Farrakhan will say something anti-Semitic, and then he'll get denounced for it, and then he'll talk about how the Jewish conspiracy is going after him and trying to silence him. And it's like, you just said something anti-Semitic. It's not a Jewish conspiracy trying to silence you. It's people criticizing you.
Yeah, until I start getting a check from the Jewish conspiracy, I'm it is an excuse as old as time to, okay, we're going to blame this on a Jewish conspiracy. It's like, okay.
Yeah, that's why I didn't. That's the other reason I don't like that group having the name Judas, because Judas is very much a name associated with anti-Semitism. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous and it's annoying.
so the other thing I wanted to talk about was the ceasefire. Um, so let's see. What do I have here about the ceasefire?